Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on the Corrositex domal corrosion system, also a validated method under OECD 435. My name is Joe McCarthy. I'm the Lab Services Manager and Regulatory Affairs Specialist with Dell Laboratories. What we're going to discuss today is what you need to perform Corrositex, how easy it is to do it, time and cost advantages of using Corrositex, and where and how you can use the results. What's the regulatory acceptance of the test method? So Corrositex is a validated OECD in vitro test tube method that will allow you to determine the corrosivity and assign a GHS category and youll packing group for corrosive materials. For Corrositex, the types of materials that it's most appropriate for are inorganic and organic acids, acid derivatives such as anhydrides and haloacids, different salts, acyl halides, alkylamines, inorganic and organic bases, chlorosilanes, and metal halides. And the test fully replaces live animal testing and is the proprietary technology of Vitro International. This video is an unboxing of what you will get in the kit. Each kit for each sample will come with one vial of BioBarrier matrix with microstir bar, a vial of the BioBarrier diluent. You get a rack of 7 test vials, 4 for your test sample, 1 each for positive and negative control, and a 7th for an extra for a negative control. You'll also get a tray of the membranes. Similarly, you get 7, you'll get 4 for the sample you're testing, 1 each for positive and negative control, and a spare. It also comes with a data sheet to record your observations and your test times, and a brochure that you use for the qualification and categorization steps that we'll discuss in the upcoming slides. It also comes with a qualification tube to see if your sample is appropriate for this method, and 2 categorization tubes that help you define what the time cutoffs are for your sample, and a confirmation tube for products that don't trigger a color change in the categorization step. What you'll need internally to do the test, doesn't come with the kit, is a stir hot plate, an analytical balance thermometer, 2 timers, an Eppendorf pipette, some parafilm or saran wrap can also be used. And then samples for positive and negative control. You could use a 10% citric acid solution as a negative control, and sodium hydroxide pellets as a positive control. In the first step is a qualification, and you'll notice we're using a very highly colored sample here, and that's a request from one of the people on the webinar today. They had concerns about that. And you'll pipette 150 microliters or 100 milligrams of a solid into the sample tube. And you're looking for a color change. You'll see that that has turned a deep pink. So that's a positive qualification, and you could use Corrositex for your test. In the second example, we'll see there's no color change, and that's a negative response, and the sample is not appropriate for Corrositex. And what we would do is recommend that you contact your technical representative at Vitro International for guidance on what to do at that step. On step 2, you'll use the categorization tubes. So take your first tube A, and you'll pipette 150 microliters or 100 milligrams of sample into it, and look for a color change. And you see we got a positive response for that third pink color. And you also take the same sample and pipette it into tube B to look for this color change there. You give it a little shake, and you compare it against the color chart. This is the same process, but with a different sample, so you can see the different color changes. In this case, we got no response in tube A. There's no color change. But as we add it to tube B, we get a dramatic color change, and you match that up against the color chart to see if this goes into category 1 or 2. And category 1 or 2 defines what your cutoff times are for defining your GHS category or your transport packing group 1, 2, or 3. If there's no color change observed in either A or B, the kit also comes with a confirm reagent. You would pipette 150 microliters into your confirm tube. You add 2 drops of the confirm reagent. You give it a bit of a shake, and you match up the color with the confirmed color code to get category 1 or 2. For your BioBarrier preparation, you'll take the BioBarrier matrix in a hot plate and heat it to 68 to 70 degrees. You do not want the temperature to exceed 70 degrees. That's why it's nice to have a thermostat controlled hot plate. Then you take your diluent and you add it, mix it up, and then turn on the stir and you let it blend for 5 minutes. Be sure not to shake it too hard or blend it too quickly because you don't want air bubbles to get entrained into the BioBarrier mix. At the end of 5 minutes, you're going to let it sit for 5 more minutes to let any bubbles rise to the surface. And to prevent the BioBarrier from solidifying, you do not remove it from the water bath. And then we proceed to the next step. In this video, we're going to show the membrane preparation where you pipette the BioBarrier matrix into the membranes that are shown in the little tray to the right there. So you would assemble your Eppendorf repeat pipetter. You fill it up. And then dispense 4 of 200 microliter aliquots to each of the membranes. Be sure to cover the entire membrane and that you have no air bubbles formed. Any air bubbles in the gel will alter the outcome of your test. If that does occur and you get bubbles out of it, you should discard that and replace it with a spare membrane. Any of the unused BioBarrier can be stored in an airtight wrap at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius and kept for 7 more days. When you're done pipetting the BioBarrier in, you want to take your tray and tightly wrap it with saran wrap or the parafilm. And you could store it for 2 to 8 degrees Celsius for 7 days. Be sure when we put the cover back on that you'll write down the preparation time because you need these to refrigerate for at least 2 hours before using. Typically, we make the barriers one day and then we use them the next day. As I mentioned, any of the unused BioBarrier can be refrigerated and use at a later date. It can be stored up to 1 month. To use them again, you would put the mix back in your water bath and gently warm it 3 to 4 minutes without stirring at 60 degrees Celsius. And the next step is the classification. So you would, using your Eppendorf pipette, you take a 500 microliter or 500 milligram if it's a solid sample. You remove the cap from the vial. You add one of the prepared membranes with the BioBarrier. And then you pipette your sample into the top. You'll notice the membranes are sitting on an ice bath. You want to keep these cool while you're waiting to run the next test. And after you've applied the sample, you start your timer. And this is a close-up. We'll look at the center vial here of that sample that we just pipetted. And you should start to see right there a pink liquid start to come through, and that's your endpoint. We would have noticed it was about 4 minutes and 30 seconds was the breakthrough time. Of course, we started the video late. We didn't want you to sit here for 4 minutes watching it. This sample that we tested here was also that highly colored purple sample from slide number 2. So you can see that that intense color of the sample is not interfering with your test. After you perform the test and you've noted your breakthrough times, You would cross-reference your breakthrough time versus the categorization step, whether it was category 1 or 2. And based on those times, you could determine what your DOT transport packing group was or your GHS classification. In this case, that sample we just showed broke through at about 4.5 minutes. So that makes the product a Class A PG2 or GHS corrosive 1B. Part of the advantage of Corrositex is that you could conceivably get the testing done within 1 working day. You could start first thing in the morning, break your biobarriers, refrigerate them for 2 hours, and do your testing after lunch, and you can have results by the end of the day. The traditional animal testing, the test runs up to 14 days if there is any observed tissue damage. But a little note on the timing there, you could have Corrositex done in 1 day if you have a kit on site. If you order one, we could have it to you within 2 to 3 days. But with the animal testing, you would have to find a lab, get a quote, you get a protocol, return the protocol. Their study director and QA team approves the protocol. They usually run the backlog of several weeks to several months before they even start the test. So you're easily looking at several weeks to months to get results if you need them. Also, as far as costing goes, we know that pricing for Corrositex starts at $1,195 US per kit versus $2,500 or more for the animal testing, of course. Corrositex is available in multiple sample kits. You could buy a 1, 2, or 4 sample kit. So there's a discount for bulk pricing. Also, if you're not comfortable making the biobarriers, those are available pre-made. They are shipped overnight within 24 hours, so that's why they won't be shipped to you on a Friday. We don't want them sitting over the weekend. It might be more cost effective if you are missing some of the equipment or you're not yet comfortable making that. But I think we've seen from the videos, it's a fairly easy process. There's nothing overly complicated about how to make this. As far as regulatory acceptance, I'll bring this first slide up. This is the OECD 435 in vitro membrane barrier test method for corrosion. And highlighted at the bottom here, you'll see it says currently the only in vitro method test covered by OECD 435 is the Corrositex test method. And that's important because I'm going to show you the regulatory references that they cite OECD 435 as opposed to the Corrositex brand name. But OECD 435 is Corrositex. For US transport under 49 CFR 173-136, they do offer that whenever practical, an in vitro method authorized in 173-137 be used. When we refer to that same section, they do cite specifically tests conducted in accordance with the OECD guideline 435. OECD 435 is Corrositex. For Transport Canada, they're a little less verbose about it, but they do put it into each packing group under section 2.42 of the Transportation of Dangerous Goods Regulations, or they also cite as determined in accordance with OECD Guideline 404, which is the animal testing, or OECD Guideline 435, and they cite that in each of packing group 1, 2, and 3. For workplace chemicals under OSHA, under HCS 2012 Appendix A23, they do give examples of scientifically validated test methods, including OECD 435, which is Corrositex. For Canada and WMIS, they also refer to use of a scientifically validated method, and in their guidance, scientifically valid method refers to the OECD methods. In the technical guidance that WMIS issues, they also specifically cite an example of a valid method is OECD 435, which of course is Corrositex. For consumer products in the USA, they also include validated in vitro methods are recommended. Of course, an OECD method is understood to be a validated in vitro method. Similarly, for Canada, for consumer products, they're looking for test methodology that conforms with good scientific practices, and they further define good scientific practices as OECD test guidelines. Again, OECD 435 is a validated method, which is Corrositex. So what we discussed today is what you need to perform Corrositex is just common laboratory equipment. To perform it, you just need common bench skills. There's nothing complicated about this. It's easily half the cost, and I think almost at 1/100th of the time in compared to animal testing, and you could use it for transport, workplace, and consumer regulations. If you're interested in these kits that you use internally, in the United States, you can buy them directly from In Vitro International, and their contact information is here on the left. In Canada, Dell Laboratories is the exclusive distributor for Corrositex, and you can contact me directly. If you're overseas in Europe, in Asia, there's contact information available on the In Vitro website of who their local partners are to obtain the kits. We'll open this up for Q&A. Question is, does irritation testing override corrosive testing, including in this one? So the Corrositex only evaluates dermal corrosion. It does not assess whether a substance is irritating or corrosive. As far as a regulatory interpretation, it's whether if you had irritation test data, it would extrapolate that if you had test data showing the product was not irritating, then it would not be corrosive either. Are there particular chemicals that give false positives? The test does include a positive and negative control. That's part of the method. And if you get the expected results for that, it validates that you've prepared your membranes correctly and that the test method is valid. So in this case, we use 10% citric acid as the negative control. We've not actually seen a breakthrough on that. We'll run that up to 90 minutes, but the cutoff for that is 75 minutes. And we use, if we know that the sample is alkaline, we'll use sodium hydroxide pellets. And if it's suspected to be acidic, we use sulfuric acid. And that's part of the test method. So if you get those controls in there, you should be comfortable accepting the results that you get for your test substance. Question that come up, did you validate by comparing the use of Corrositex with an actual in vitro test? Extensive validation was done by OECD and IVCAM, where they tested hundreds of different samples against actual in vitro testing. Those are available online. If the person asking the question could send me an email directly, and I could share that with you. I have a question. Have you seen PMRA outcomes yet with this test? In my experience, I've not submitted this with the PMRA application, but I'll confer with my colleague, Terry Dickinson, that she may have. We do have a question. If not corrosive in animals, does Corrositex override the results? If you have test data using the animal testing that it's not corrosive, I'm not sure why you would retest it with an in vitro method. And keep in mind, a lot of the test data available is on the raw material as supplied. If you mix those with other chemicals, you may have some synergistic effects. You know, particularly if you have some co-solvents or surfactants, that may help a substance penetrate the membrane more quickly than it would on its own. And that comes more to the weight of evidence approach to the classification, where often people will look at it and say, well, I have so much of an alkaline substance, and we're just going to call it the same category, whether it be sodium hydroxide, you're a class A PG2, and you don't want to do the testing. The real advantage here is confirming what your classification is. There's responsibility under transport regulations to have proof of classification. And you may be selling yourself short, that perhaps it's not in a packing group 2. Maybe you're really packing group 3, and you could take advantage of larger limited quantities, or maybe you've been over labeling things. The question is, the chart that comes with the kit the only one you can use for comparison? Yes, it is, but the chart comes with every kit because you have to match it against that color. Here's a question. I'm wanting to ask if there are industry advantages to sending it to them, for example, to do the test for a company to order a kit and perform it in-house. It will, of course, be cost advantage to do it internally. The price of a kit will be less than the price of having a third party do it. In my own selfish reasons, as a third party testing lab, you have the advantage of that. You have independent results. Corrositex is included in our ISO 17025 accreditation, so we've demonstrated that we could do it competently, and that would be accepted by regulatory authorities. So that seems to be the end of the questions. If anything comes to mind, again, please contact me directly, and within the next day or two, we will be sending out the links to the recorded video and to the webinar slides. Thank you very much, and have a great day.